on. That makes me understand that y'all are following and y'all are active. I would highly appreciate it. Perfect. So let me share my screen. Okay, so if you have any doubts, y'all will have to like wait until I give you the opportunity because I won't be able to see the chat box. But yeah, so first things first, congratulations to all those who qualified to semifinals and will probably qualify to finals. I think I was able to see a couple of matches and I was really proud of all the speeches. It had content, it had manner, everything, which is really appreciative. And you should have like a tap on your back for the performance that you all gave in interstate rounds. So congratulations for making to semifinals, and I hope you all do pretty well and qualify. And the best ones qualify to the finals, to the IDL 2022. Having said that, let's move towards the format briefing. So the way how the semifinals and finals are going to be, the format is going to be similar and same mostly. So how it's going to be is it's going to be WSTC, which is World School Debating Championship. The way how the flow works is exactly the same as Asian Parliamentary. So you don't have to like literally worry about the kinds of speeches that are going to be there or the speaking order that is going to be there. The only difference that is going to be there is the reply speeches, which means that this time in the WSTC format, we are going to have reply speeches for all the categories. So be it the juniors category, middle school, or the senior category, we are going to have reply speeches. Other than that, everything remains similar, which is 3 speakers from both sides. So the team which was in the interstate rounds is going to sustain in the semifinals and finals as well. So it's the 3 versus 3. Next is the alternative speeches from each side. I think you all already are aware of how the matches work. So PM and then LO, then DPM, then DLO, government whip, opposition whip, and then op reply and government reply. So it's basically that. And every speaker has a different responsibility, which means every speaker has a different role, which is similar to what was there in Asian Parliamentary as well. So you also don't need to care a lot about the speaker roles that are going to be there. I think the only difference that is there in terms of last round and this round is 2. First, in terms of the reply speeches, second, in terms of POIs, and third, in terms of how exactly the timings are going to be. So please pay attention only to that bit, and then also how the schedule is going to work and how WSGC works. But the most important thing is the difference that is what was there in interstate rounds and now. So if you see the format right now, it's proposition speaker 1, and then opposition speaker 1, followed by speaker 2 of proposition, and then speaker 2 of opposition, followed by proposition speaker 3, and then opposition speaker 3, post which you have opposition speaker 1 or 2 giving the reply speech, after which you have proposition speaker 1 or 2 giving the reply speech. So the last speech of the round is given by proposition, as opposed to generally how it is opposition, right?
Wait,
so,
ma'am.
Yes.
Then we'll give the reply speech first.
Yes.
Opposition will give reply speech first.
Yes, yes.
Ma'am, will there be any POIs?
Yes,
for
there will
classes
be
4 to 6?
Yes.
Even for 4 to 6?
Yes.
Okay.
That's the change in difficulty level. Okay, yes, Khushi?
So ma'am, only speaker number 1 and only speaker number 2, like only one of them has to give the reply speech.
Correct.
Not both of them.
Yes, yes. So it's either speaker 1 or speaker 2. They can decide among themselves as to who can give the reply speech. But other than that, it is the same. Any other questions? Okay, let's move to the next one then. So what is the difference between the juniors format? So the juniors, last time you had 3 minutes of speech. This time you have 4 minutes speech. And you did not have reply last time, you have reply this time. So first speech is 4 minutes, second speech is 4 minutes, third speech is also 4 minutes, reply speech is for 2 minutes only. Any doubts in this? 4 to 6 category, any doubts?
No.
Cool. And then can anyone tell me quickly as to what would be the time frame when you can ask POI?
Ma'am, I have a
You can
doubt.
ask POIs in
After
the
1 minute of
So you
the
have 4 minute speeches. You can ask in the middle of your speech because the first minute and the last minute of your speech are protected time. So in between the second and third minute of your speech, you are allowed to ask POIs.
Correct. So the
ma'am,
moment
I
when
have a
the
question.
just a second, I'll get back to that. So the moment when the clock hits the 1 minute mark, you can start asking POIs. And the moment when the clock hits the 3rd minute mark, you can not ask any POIs after that. Yes, now I'll entertain the questions, Pranya.
Ma'am,
Ma'am,
I just had a
I have a
question. I've joined late, so I haven't really heard all of the meeting, but I just had a question. Are we going to get the topic before the competition, or are we going to have to make a speech on the point?
I will get back to that later because in the later point of my presentation, you'll get exactly when
Okay.
exactly you'll get the motion, when the stance will be released, everything. Okay.
Okay, thank you.
ma'am.
Yes, Ahan.
So, ma'am, my question is, will the POIs count into the timing of your speech?
Yes.
Even the question part that the teammate asked.
Yes. So that's a very good question because the POIs cannot be for 1 minute. The POIs have to be for 15 seconds. So they cannot take more than 15 seconds of your time. So the moment when you think that, this person is asking a really long POI, you can tell them that your time is over and I understood that question and I'll answer that question. So the moment you think that the question is like literally like 30 seconds or more than 15 seconds, you can stop them. And also like the speakers have the ability to stop them even before that. So the moment when you understand the question, you can stop them, okay? And also that's one of the, a good question to clarify that please keep your POI as short as possible. So don't keep like, oh, your point was that people in India are dying. Why do you think it is so? Just ask, why do you think people are in India are dying? So keep the framing of the questions as short as possible, as opposed to making it a paragraph. So it's always better to keep it written somewhere, as opposed to like making it a long paragraph and like on the spot or impromptu. Cool. This is the juniors format. Now, with respect to the seniors format, sorry. Yeah, this is the middle school format that is for 7th to 9th. The speech is going to be for 5 minutes and the reply speech stays 2 minutes. So each speaker gets 5 minutes and the reply speech is going to be for 2 minutes. You can ask POIs from the 1st minute to the 4th minute. Any questions? Cool. Then let's go to the seniors format. Seniors format is the most closest to WSTC because in WSTC you get 8 minutes, but here you're getting only 7 minutes. So it's just like 1 minute more than last round, in case if you're wondering why the timings are the way it is. So you'll get 7 minutes each, and then the reply speech is going to be for 3 minutes. I hope there are no doubts in this too.
Could I see the slide for 7 to 9 once?
Yeah, sure.
I had a doubt.
Yeah, sure. Go ahead.
Was that our educator when we were speaking said that the time for the 7th to 9th age group was 5 minutes. So throughout our qualifier match, we had 5-minute long speeches.
Throughout the qualifier round, you mean
Uh,
semifinals?
Yeah, the semifinals. So
Yeah, so throughout the semifinals and finals, you'll have 5 minutes.
no. Through the match before this, the interstate round, we had a
Yeah.
5-minute speech. The educator said that in the last that she was told that we had 5 minutes.
It was for 4 minutes.
Okay.
Ma'am, I have a doubt.
Yeah.
So are we allowed to ignore the POIs?
So if you don't, so the way how POIs generally work is that if I'm speaking and I'm saying that 3 reasons why I believe that we should stop pollution, and then I think, let's say Aditya has a question to me and he says POI, and then I have the ability to say that rejected, or I can say I can take that POI later. So it's completely on the speaker whether they want to take POIs or they don't want to take POIs. Okay.
Ma'am,
But ma'am,
I have a
I think
question.
how many should I take? Should we take?
There's nothing like how many you should take. I think you should prioritize your content over the other. I will get back to you, Ahan. So you should prioritize your content over this POIs, but you should take POIs for engagement so that you are responding to your opponents as well and you're not running a parallel case. However, if you want to take, and I think most people take like 2 POIs, like the max you can take is 2 POIs. But I think if you will keep taking POIs, you won't be able to finish your content. And that's not a really good thing, right?
Ma'am, I have a doubt. So the third speaker's job is usually to bring rebuttal, right, to the debate.
Which speaker's job?
Third speaker's job. They're usually
Yeah.
the one who find faults in the argument, who find the loopholes. So what is the major difference between speech 3 and the reply speech? Because
Okay.
both of them act somewhat as the whip, right? As the you could say that.
That is correct. And this is going to be answered tomorrow because tomorrow is going to be like complete as to what is the speaker role of each individual. But to answer it like right now, the only difference that is there with respect to whip speech and reply speech is that whip still can add some things new, as in like whips can probably say that like add new examples, new a little bit like new rebuttals and stuff like that. But I think the reply speech can only add cannot add anything new. But secondly, it's also that the reply speeches are completely like, like you're just convincing the judge that why we win, but also you can do the clash to clash analysis and completely summarize as to why you win as opposed to them. So it's more like convincing ability as opposed to like whipping as to like clarifying what your case was or like doing as to like which particular clashes you win as opposed to the reply switch. I'll get back to that tomorrow for sure.
Ma'am, I have a question. 2 questions actually.
Okay.
So my first question is, how many POIs can be asked to a person during their speech?
That's up to you. You can ask how many ever you want to. But then that doesn't mean that you can heckle them. So let's say if Rian asks a POI and he says POI, and I say I don't want to take the POI, then Rian cannot ask me a POI for next 30 minutes. Okay?
For next 30 minutes?
Next 30 seconds. Yeah, that's 30 seconds. That means that you cannot heckle the speakers, okay? And in most of the tournaments, heckling is like considered a very harsh thing to do. That means like things like equity proceedings can happen against you. So do not heckle the speakers whatsoever.
Ma'am, I have another question.
Okay.
Do you lose marks if you like reject a POI?
So the answer to that is that if you are not engaging in your speech and you're also not taking a POI, sure, yes. But if you're engaging in your speech, which means you're already responding to them in your speech, then you don't lose any points.
Okay.
POIs are just for engagement, just to engage with the case of your opponents. Yes. Khushia.
So ma'am, is there a particular like only one speaker from a team can ask a POI? Like only the first speaker can ask the POI?
No, anyone can ask POI to the opponents. Also, you cannot ask POI to your own team. I hope that is like,
Yes, ma'am.
yeah, and then you can only ask POIs to your opponents. Tanya?
So Miss, I'm afraid I joined a little late. So can you share the slide again?
Which slide do you want?
I'm for grade 4 to 6.
This is your format. As in, this is the timings that you'll get. So 4 to 6, you'll get 4 minutes to speak. And this is the format. You'll get this slide regardless after the presentation. So don't worry. Cool.
Ma'am, I have a question.
Okay.
Ma'am, why does the opposition speak their reply speech first? Like, I mean, the proposition is going before opposition, right? So why?
So the reason why opposition goes first is that if proposition goes first and opposition goes last, then proposition has no chance to respond to opposition. So let's say if opposition says something which is extremely wrong about proposition, saying that, oh, they did not engage to our case and therefore they lose, I think at least there should be some chance for proposition to respond to that. So it's just to make it fair and make it fair to an extent that proposition can also respond to what the opposition. Yes.
But then, ma'am, what about the proposition? Even they, when it's their turn for the reply speech, they can also say something.
No, but they're still getting like a chance to respond to them in opposition with. Yes, Ahana.
Ma'am, so can we address the POIs in the reply speech?
You cannot.
No. Okay.
No. Because it's going to be probably an engaging material, which is going to be new. So if in case you have already engaged to that in your material, you can probably refer to that POI and in case and can say that, oh, my whip speech already dealt with that POI, and my whip speech has already dealt with that claim. So that is fine. Other than that, I don't think you should specifically respond to a POI in, let's say, your reply speech for the first time.
Ma'am,
Yeah.
ma'am, can you ask POIs during the reply speech?
No, there's no reply speeches in reply. There's no POI in reply speeches.
Okay, thank you, ma'am.
There are some questions. Okay, cool. Nitiksha, would you want to deal with this slide?
Hey, hi. So first of all, hello everyone. Secondly, excuse me for the like a little bit like the annoyance that my voice might be creating more than usual because of the cold I have. I'll just try to quickly cover the theme and then I'll hand it over to Afreen so that the experience is better for you. Just one quick friendly suggestion. Whenever you have a question to ask, just so Afreen isn't annoyed, can we please raise hands and wait for her to acknowledge rather than saying ma'am all over? Uh, Cool. With that, the theme for the out rounds, as in the semis and the finals, would be possible pathways. What are possible pathways then, and how is it different from the aspirations that we set in the last round? In the last round, we were setting aspirations to resolve internal conflicts. In here, we are talking about India with respect to other countries and its relation to the other countries. So, what becomes relevant in here are your foreign relations, India's participation in the various international or common shared issues that we have with other countries, etc. This could be India in the east, right? As in India with its neighboring countries. This could be India uh, in conflict with the West, as in developing developed divide. Any sort of like a linkage between India and any other country is within the purview of this particular round and theme. But when we say possible pathways, we are particularly talking about a type of motion here. The type of motion that you will be dealing with is this House wills motion, where you are particularly supposed to propose how something is going to happen, which means that you are supposed to tell us if you want to do something, as in India should remain non aligned or whatever. Read the sample motion on this slide here. This House will use the non alignment stance for any international conflict in which India isn't directly a part. What you will do in here is tell us how this is going to happen, right? What this is going to look like, how Indian politicians and dignitaries going to deal with it for real in practical circumstances to actually display their tendency towards non-alignment. This means that this is not principle but practical argumentation, and practical argumentation means you are also supposed to argue on the feasibility of things. So if in the past I've told you that something happening or not happening doesn't matter because we presume feasibility, in here we don't. We have to tell, we have to give pragmatic and doable actionable things or models which can be worked on for India as a country. But so mostly it's you engaging as a country against other countries or in between other countries, for example the Russia Ukraine war and India in between, and getting to choose a side which it should align with, or it's some like other issues that India has because of the existence of other countries and the hierarchies between them. For example, the tendency of like the elite in the India to move outside and thereby brain drain being caused, which means that these kinds of motions will be dealt with. I think there's another slide that explains the sub themes within this theme, which Afreen I think should be able to explain better. But I hope you understand the theme and what kind of motions you will have. We will entertain questions now if there are any with respect to this. Raise your hands. Are there no questions? Cool, smooth. Afreen, I think we can switch to the next slide if that's about theme.
Yeah, this was probably the most technical slide, and I'm kind of shocked that they don't have any question.
Yeah, same.
let's go to the next slide then. Yes, so how do you
Actually,
approach?
I have a question regarding the previous slide.
Yes, go ahead.
Yeah, so when we are speaking on this topic, I mean, possible pathways. So what are our limits? I mean, is there some some rule that we cannot violate some foreign policy of India or something like that?
There's no such thing as violating foreign policy. So okay, so this is not like MUN where you are a country who has an already existing stance and you can't budge from it. This is different. Even if as India we haven't done something so far, you can you can propose that radical change as long as you can prove that it's practical to be done. If it hasn't happened so far, now's the time to do it. That's doable. It doesn't, you don't have to align with the current interests of India. I mean, of course, you have to safeguard India. You can't say, oh, India can go to hell when you're debating for India. But you can think in novel ways. That's
Uh,
okay.
Done. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Right. So the way how you're supposed to approach these motions is basically, as Nitiksha already told you, that it's going to be this house will or this house would motions. So the way how most of the motions are going to be, I think last round, most of the motions were this house released that motions, where you had to debate more on the principle level as opposed to pragmatics. But here you're supposed to debate on pragmatics as opposed to like the principle, as Nitiksha already told you. But second thing, I think one more difference that is there with respect to the previous round is that you were still given that opportunity to stick with that, with your state. For example, if somebody's from Haryana, if somebody's from let's say Karnataka, so they're supposed to stick with their state, and if they want to, they could give reference to other states, right? But in this particular like kinds of motions and the way how we expect you to approach these motions is that it's better that you stick to the nation as a whole, that is India. And secondly, if you want to like specifically give examples to a particular state, you can do so. But we would like, but that doesn't mean that like you're restricted to not use examples from states and stuff like that. So you can give reference to the states, but it is prioritized to give reference to the nation as a whole. So you're supposed to debate as India as opposed to your state, which you were doing in the last round. So nobody is Haryana, nobody is Karnataka, nobody is Telangana anymore. You're India. Okay. But obviously you're representing your state regardless. Cool. Then you have what is the burden of government. Government is supposed to propose a model and prove its feasibility. Now, when you talk about feasibility, you cannot come up with a model which India isn't necessarily able to implement, for example. That implementation part can be questioned by opposition, which means that if I say that we should have, let's say, 100 solar power plants in India, if India is not practically able to implement that, that's something which is unfeasible for India, which means that it is not feasible for India, and therefore that model has no viability, right? That means you're supposed to make sure that the model that you're proposing has to have some amount of feasibility that India can implement it in real life. You can take feasibility in terms of, let's say, whether India has that much amount of resources to do so, or whether like the harms of it is like more as opposed to the benefits of it. So that doesn't mean, so there's still one fiat that proposition has. Can anyone tell me what fiat is if you have heard about this word before? Proposition fiat, what is fiat? All those who have debated before in WSDC format or AP format, BP format.
Doesn't mean the plan of action or the resolution model that proposition puts forth.
Not really, but good try. Anybody else? So fiat basically means that there are some things which opposition cannot challenge. For example, if proposition tells that, look, this is our policy and we would implement that. Now, you can question the implementation of the policy in terms of the practical world as to why the implementation could be harmed, and there are harms to the implementation. However, you cannot question the part where whether it is going to be passed in parliament as a policy, because India cannot like single-handedly make decisions. There is a democracy, there is parliamentary system, which means that every bill goes through the parliament, Lok Sabha, Rajya Sabha, and then a policy is made. That means that government's fiat is whatever policy that they are presenting to the House, it is going to be passed whatsoever. It is going to be agreed by the president, it is going to be agreed by the parliament, and that is their fiat. So they have one amount of, let's say, immunity, which opposition cannot challenge to. So you cannot come up as opposition and say that, oh, this policy, people are never going to agree to this, and therefore this policy can never be passed in parliament. You cannot question that. You can, however, question as to like what could be the flaws in implementation, what could be the flaws in, let's say, coming up with the resources for that, what could be the flaws of the consequences of the policy and stuff like that. But you cannot essentially question whether that policy that government is proposing will be passed or not. I hope I have made it clear.
Yes, ma'am.
Cool. The third thing then is opposition finds flaws with the proposition in terms of the model's feasibility and might even support an alternative with less opportunity cost. Now, I think the reason why opportunity cost matters a lot is that a lot of times the kind of like, let's say the kind of policy that proposition is giving takes a lot of opportunity cost. Let's say the debate is about rehabilitation and harsher punishments. So when you say that, look, we will give them harsher punishments or longer punishments, but we'll simultaneously give them rehabilitation. Now, in order to give both of them, you will have to use a lot of state's resources and a lot of like time and efforts and everything, right? Now, you can, from opposition, tell that, look, this model is probably going to be so costly, firstly, in terms of time, secondly, in terms of the kind of like money that state is probably going to spend on these criminals, but thirdly, in terms of like the way how the entire criminal system is actually working, right? That means opposition can go ahead and find flaws in that policy, but can also tell that like why we are probably going to be able to solve that problem better. So initially, when I told you that there is always a problem that any motion is trying to solve, in this house, you can also solve problems. That doesn't mean that only proposition is solving the problem. I think at the end of the day, we agree that, okay, both sides are trying to solve the problem, because if proposition identifies the problem that, oh, global warming is a problem, I think that's a fact and you cannot disagree to that. And therefore, if that is a problem that the motion also is trying to solve, I think opposition cannot like get away with that burden of solving global warming for that matter. Therefore, opposition can come up with a counter model, which is known as the model given by opposition as opposed to proposition, and can go ahead and implement a different policy and say that, look, this policy probably won't have that much feasibility. What we can do is like remove the harsher punishment that proposition is talking about. We can give them solely that rehabilitation part, and therefore our counter policy is better than the proposition's counter like policy for that matter, right? So opposition can do two things. Can give a counter policy, can also find flaws in the model of proposition. That doesn't mean that opposition always has to give a counter policy. It's basically a choice of opposition to give a counter policy and tell what could be the alternative way to solve that problem. However, it's always appreciated to give a counter policy, right? Because it's always more convincing for the judges to buy as to where they're able to solve the problem better, as opposed to like doing nothing to solve the problem, if that makes sense. So opposition can do all of that. So that doesn't mean that proposition only gives model. Opposition can also give model, but also have to be comparative as to why their model has more benefits as opposed to proposition. Is that clear?
Yes, miss.
Correct. So let's move to the next one. So what are the ground rules for the semifinals and finals? The ground rules are simple. The motion will deal with India on the globe, which means that you're supposed to be comparative in terms of like India as a country, and then you can compare it with like, as in not compare it. So if it is a policy, you can probably use references from other nations as to what policies they use, and then give like link it back to India as to why it is likely to have better value in India as well. But secondly, you can also go ahead and like make references. So basically, you're debating as India. So you're supposed to say what India should do and what is in the interest of India to do so, right? So that's what you're dealing with in terms of the semifinals and finals. Then the adjudicators will give you oral adjudication for semifinals, which means no suspense for you in semifinals per se. You will receive the verdict on the spot, and you will know whether you're qualifying to the finals in the next day. So congratulations if you make it to the finals, but also congratulations because you have made it to semi-final. That's a great thing. Now, finals will be silent till closing ceremony. So finals are going to start, and I think you know the tentative timetable, that is 4:30 to 8:30. That means you will receive your verdict only in the night, that is 8:30, like post 8:30. So even if the matches start at 4, you won't get your result immediately and you will receive it only later, just to make that suspense as to who is the winner of IDL. But that doesn't mean you won't get your feedback as to why and where you can improve. You will still get the feedback and you'll still get the reasoning as to why you won or why you lost, just so that you can improve in the next round of IDL probably. But then yes, so you will get, yes.
Ma'am, what happens to the team that wins the finals?
They win the finals.
So doesn't anything happen like they gone to internationals?
There is nothing like international as of now, but yeah, that's a great plan. What happens to the team which wins IPL? Tell me. Do you watch Indian Premier League?
Um,
You don't watch cricket?
I do watch cricket matches.
That becomes the India team.
No, that.
What are we getting? I think that's what.
Yeah,
But
you
they just win the IPL trophy. They like, I mean, it's interstate. The competition is supposed to be between states and cities, right? So
yeah,
Ma'am,
if you
do
win
the
that,
final,
that's a great thing. Yeah.
exactly. Cool,
ma'am, do
yeah.
the finalists qualify for the ISDS national camp or no?
I think Kamal sir would answer that question. But yeah, if you're from 7 to 9, then 10 to 12, I think you still have a chance to go there. But I don't want to like disclose that right now. Pranya, yes.
Ma'am, so if we get the topic on the spot, then how much time will we get to prepare a speech?
I'll tell you, you won't get, you just like wait. I'll tell you when the motion is going to be released. Okay, so that's how, so yeah, so the winners and finals are going to be announced only in the closing ceremony. Yes, Rian.
Ma'am, the motion for semi-finals will be given 2 days before.
It's a little different, and I'll tell you when the motion is going to be released in the scheduled part of the presentation.
Ma'am, what about the finals? The motion for the final?
It's going to be same for semis and finals. So the way how you're going to receive the motions are going to be similar. I think I should just go to the schedule after this slide, rather than dealing with other things. Cool. So the adjudicator's decision is going to be final decision, which means that after they give you verdict and after they give you oral adjudication, you can't, and I think you cannot just like change the decision is not going to be changed whatsoever. But I've also like seen how y'all like question the ability of judges to judge. I think most of the judges that come to IDL are very qualified judges, and this is not the first time that they're judging, which means that they have judged a couple of times before, and that's not just Indian tournaments, they have judged international tournaments and are recognized people. Therefore, it's always better to seek information as to why you lost, as opposed to questioning the judgment in terms of you don't have the ability to judge. That's very rude, but also is an equity violation in most of the tournaments internationally as well. So please don't do that. But yeah, question the judgment in terms of the reasoning, but not the judgment of itself. Okay, so you can always ask like, okay, did you consider that point when I said this, as opposed to saying that I don't think you heard me, right? So there's always better ways to like put work of certain statements so that it's not like rude per se. So if you think that a particular so if you think after the oral adjudication is done, if you think a particular argument from your like team wasn't necessarily recognized enough, you can pinpoint that argument and ask a question. Tell that why, what did you think about my argument about people? What did you think about my argument in terms of different stakeholders? And then judges have to answer as to what they think about that. And then they will give you a reasoning as to why they did not think that particular argument was that important, which gives you two things to understand. A, you would know where the judges like that the judges have listened to your speeches, but B, you will also understand as to why that argument wasn't necessarily that great to be recognized, or what you could have done better in terms of that argument. So I just wanted to give you a quick review as to how you can probably ask questions as opposed to questioning the ability of judges to judge. I hope that makes sense. Now the semis and finals are going to be held online. You all know that, and any argument presented beyond this time won't be considered. However, the speaker can complete his or her sentence after the tap, which means that that basically means that the timing that is being given to you is going to be considered final. And the last thing that you're going to end after 4 minutes or 5 minutes or 7 minutes for different categories, you'll get 15 seconds of grace period, and after which you cannot speak whatsoever. And I told you earlier also, if you exceed that time, your method marks is going to be reduced. Moving on to first the schedule, I guess. and then moving on to anything else. This is the schedule for the 4th to 6th grade. The last round, you were receiving the motion 2 days before, but this time you'll receive the motion only 1 day before. The timing on 12th of November, so on 12th of November, 1 p.m., you will receive the motion for semifinals. And then on 13th of November, 4:30 to 5:30, you have the match, the semifinals match. All right. Now, after that, you will receive your judgment immediately. Therefore, the motion is going to be released immediately after that. That is motion released for finals. That is 6 p.m., 13th November. And finally, on 14th November, you'll have your finals match at 4:30, which is going to be for 1 hour. You can take a screenshot if you want to, but this is going to be shared to you after the meeting is over. Is there any question from 4th to 6th grade as to when exactly anything happens?
No, ma'am.
Cool.
Is
Are all
this PPT going to be posted on the WhatsApp group?
Is the what?
Is this PPT going to be posted on the WhatsApp group?
Yes, it will be.
Okay.
Yeah, Ria?
When will the stance be released with the motion?
Along with the motion, yes, like last time.
Okay.
Who's playing home?
Okay, then what happens to the 7th to 9th grade? You remember last time you were getting the motion 1 day before? Now it's a little difficult for you all this time. The motion will be released to you just on the same day, that is 12 noon, and you'll get, I think, around 5 hours, 45 seconds to 45 minutes to prepare. So you'll get motion release of semifinals on 12 noon, and then on the same day you'll have your matches from 5:45 to 6:45, the semifinals, and post which you will immediately receive the results. Therefore, you'll get the motion for the finals the next day, that is 12 noon, 14th November, and then the same time is going to be final stage. Any questions from 7th to 9th grade? Cool. And then for the seniors category, you were getting the motion the same day. It's just going to be 2 hours delayed. That means you're not getting the motion at 1 p.m. You're now going to get it at 3 p.m. That means 13th November, 3 p.m. you'll get the motion. And then 7 to 8:30 is your semifinals match. And then the next day, 3 p.m. you'll get your finals motions and stance. And then the finals match from 7, which is the same. Yes, Anna?
Yes, ma'am. I'm from Team Telangana, 7 to 9 category. I will be traveling on the given date. So is it possible for the Team Telangana to get the last slot possible? Because we are asked for the email that we are sent, but we have not received any reply. So that's why I'm asking it.
Okay. So your match is supposed to be on 13th, and you were saying that could it be postponed to 8:30 slot?
Yes. The latest, as late as it can be.
Yeah, I understand. If in case your opponents are okay with that, no, I think you'll need to know then who are your opponents.
No, ma'am, it's all right. As late as it can be, as late as it can be. It will work.
That's going to be very uncharitable for your opponents though, because you're all like school kids, and I think Kamal sir will deal with that. And I'll note that somewhere that Telangana's team has. Okay.
Thank you.
Cool. Any other doubts with respect to the 10th to 12th grade schedule? Cool, then let's move to the actual trading part. Yes, so these are the ground rules. I think I already told you you're not supposed to exceed your time. Now, how to do the research and how not to do the research. Do's is that always use reliable site for the research and keep a record of the sources which is to.
Ma'am, I have a question.
Yes.
Ma'am, could you go back to the previous slide that you were just shown right now? The previous slide, the one that said the motions will deal with India on the globe.
Yeah, sure.
What does that mean? The motions will deal with India on the globe. What does it mean?
I think I spend a lot of time on telling what that means, and I think Nitiksha ma'am also spent a lot of time with telling what that means. So that basically means, for the last time, that means that the motion will deal with India. That means you're supposed to debate as India as opposed to your team per se, right? So you're not Haryana when you're debating the motion. You're team India, and then you're making any motion and implementing a policy. All right. So you're supposed to deal in terms of the interest of India, or like why is it feasible for India, why it is beneficial for India and stuff like that. Okay. Cool. Ria.
So is it the matches? Is it point based or elimination? Meaning, okay, but what supposing Delhi is with Rajasthan and Maharashtra with Haryana? We have got more points than Rajasthan when Rajasthan has won. So how will that go?
Wait. You're saying that wait. So let's say a match is between Maharashtra and Delhi, and Maharashtra won the match. So like apparently, like obviously the scores that Maharashtra will get is going to be more than Delhi, right?
I'm
And
saying
that's
for
how
the
you
losing
win
team,
the-
if the losing team still gets more than the winning team of the other match.
No, that doesn't work that way. So I think in the interstate rounds as well, the first criteria was whether you won. So it's going to be the same this way as well. So the teams who are going to win are going to directly go to the finals. So there isn't anything with respect to the pointers. Okay.
Okay. Thank you.
These are the knockout rounds. Yes, Tanya.
Miss, so how many minutes is our speech? This is grade 4 to 6.
This is 4 minutes.
Okay, Miss. Thank you.
Moving on to what you're supposed to do and what you're not supposed to do with respect to research. So those are basically use reliable site, which means when you're taking statistics or when you're taking a particular thing from one site, just don't like refer to one site, try to get things from different sites so that it actually like aligns with what the information is, because a lot of time there are a lot of sites online and you don't necessarily know which site is more reliable as opposed to others, because a lot of times like the credibility of that source can be challenged, which means that don't go to, let's say, Wikipedia or anything, just like try to have good sites as opposed to Wikipedia. Then go ahead with research, keeping in mind that the possible dimensions of the case, which means that like you're not supposed to just like type on the Google and see that this house would implement policy for India, so and so. I think when you do so, I think most of the participants are going to do that, and therefore you're probably going to run the same case. I think you're also are supposed to make sure that you're like debating in like different areas, which means that you can take the ideas with respect to the sphere of politics or like economics or environment or anything of that sort. So try to like explore different ways how the motion can be debated and then come up with arguments, as opposed to just straight away trying to like search things for the motion. Because if you go and like demarcate as to what could be the possible arguments that can be done, I think that's the best way to go about that particular like motion, as opposed to just like trying to know what could be the benefits and harms, because other than that you won't be able to come up with good enough points. Then sites referred, it can be these many sites. I think government websites are always very very reliable, and then Britannica, a lot of other sites are also there. But what you're not supposed to do is basically don't stick to one source for information, as I've already told you why not, and then research the background, not the exact arguments. A lot of times people like just simply say that why a particular thing is not good for India, and you just like type that on Google. That's not the way how you will get answers. I think you're supposed to also use your logic, but I think specifically with respect to the semifinals and finals motion, you won't get a lot of things online. What you can do is like think of like creative ways to make policies, like think of what you would do in order to solve a particular problem, right? You have been given the ability to like think and like be creative and innovative to solve a particular problem. You will be policymaker someday, so use that ability and like make arguments rather than just going online and then coming up with a policy, right? Then you have research. I think that's covered. And then sites to avoid is Wikipedia, Quora, because I think Wikipedia can be edited by anyone, and Quora is like literally the opinions of people, which may be reliable in some cases, but are not reliable in a lot of cases as well. Cool. Then what in the debate are you supposed to do in the debate room, right? So in the debate rooms, the do's are debate respectfully without hurting sentiments, which means again the same thing. A lot of times I have seen after the debate, I think you all were questioning each other to an extent that, oh, this is not what I was saying in my argument, and you like question something in your rebuttal. I think don't do that. I mean, everybody's trying to like rebut the points to the best of their knowledge, right? So don't like just pinpoint a particular person and say that, oh, the government went ahead and said that we said an argument about this particular thing, which they did not even say, right? So don't go ahead after the round, or even for that matter during the round, be as respectful as possible and make sure that you're not hurting sentiments of people. You can hurt the argument, not the person. All right, cool. The next thing then is like ask for 30 to 45 seconds before starting your speech so that you can recollect what you had. I think I've already dealt with that in the previous session. So yes, so make sure that you are all composed, you know what you're supposed to say. You can take notes during rounds and stuff like that. And then ask relevant point of information only, which means that don't try to ask POI in terms of like, oh, can you deal with my argument, the third argument that that I was running in my case. Don't do that. I think just ask POI which is relevant to their speech as opposed to which is relevant to your like argument. What you can probably do is that can you engage with the point of population with our point of, let's say, stakeholder, something like that. You can do that, but don't specifically say that this point particularly does not deal with our case. Don't do that. Okay. Then you have what not to do in debate rooms. Do not make random guess in the debate by anticipating the winner midway, which means that don't be like in the middle of the round that, oh, my opponents are really good, I'm never going to win the debate, which probably is going to like question your ability to win a debate, and therefore it's going to keep you into self-doubt. So don't do that, because it's probably going to harm your ability to do well in the round as well. I think never in the debate you can anticipate who's going to win, because a lot of times the judges have different opinions, the judges also think differently, because I think conventional debates are pretty okay to judge and tell, okay, this person spoke well, as opposed to WSDC, AP, or any other format, because these are specific to what you say and why it makes sense as to like what you substantiated as opposed to your rhetorics, right? So therefore judges know the best as to who won the debate as opposed to you particularly, because they know like, because they're like, you're probably not listening. Even if you're listening, you're biased in terms of your opinion a lot of times, right? So wait until the judges give you the verdict as opposed to having the self-doubt. Then don't fixate on a particular argument as a cornerstone of the debate. I think a lot of times what kids were doing in the rounds is that they like overemphasize on one argument and kept like harping about that argument for the 3 speeches, as opposed to like trying to give different argumentations and build upon that, because it's always good to have more arguments. That doesn't mean that quantity of arguments matter a lot, but I think it's always good to have more than one argument, simply because like if opponents take over one argument, you still have another argument to present and still win the debate, right? So don't only fixate on one particular argument. Try to have as many number of try to have like at least 3 arguments or 2 arguments which you can like elaborate properly, and then try to focus more on quality of arguments as opposed to quantity as well. So an evaluation is subjective, and all adjudicators might have a different opinion, as I said earlier. Now, what is going to be the sub-theme of the qualifiers? I think India has been in the news for multiple issues lately, and I think a lot of things are going on with respect to India. So like things which you can expect in the motion, it could be like India's response to Ukraine or Russia conflict, then Ministry of External Affairs on American support to Pakistan, then India at SCO meet, or brain drain China and India, a lot of things. So these are the things which you can expect the motions to be on. When you see India in response to Ukraine and Russia conflict, you have to assume that you're supposed to talk about why India should do a particular thing as a like in context to Ukraine and Russia. So think about India's benefit and think about what could be the most feasible thing. So when you just think about India's benefit, that doesn't mean that opposition or anyone cannot make a claim on like why other nations are going to be like mad at you. So for example, if it is
Ma'am,
yeah.
Ma'am, this applies to all the categories.
Correct, yes. Yeah, so when you talk about only, let's say if you're only talking about a particular thing, that is India. So you cannot just like get away with claims from your opponents with respect to like other nations and their response to when you implement a particular policy. Because oftentimes and not, when India is implementing a policy, I think a lot of it is harming other nations as well, and other nations tend to respond to that in different ways. So you can still make arguments as to like what China's response would be to you when you are probably going to support Russia, or what is going to be the response of China when you're going to support Pakistan, so on and so forth, right? So you cannot just be like, oh, this debate was only about India, why did they talk about other states? That's not the case, because when it comes to foreign policy, you oftentimes and not tend to impact other states as well. Example for seniors category motion, this house as India, as I said, it's going to be a combination of a policy plus act motion, which means will stay silent on the issue of Russia-Ukraine war. Okay, this could be one of the motions, and this is how it could be cool. Then you have some things to always see what's going to happen in terms of the money, like how you would approach a motion and all. So there are types of motions, and different types have different methods of being approached. So every motion starts with this house, and I think I've already told you who is the house going to be. So the house is the actor who does something, which means in a particular debate, when it comes to this house would implement or this house would ban like smoking, that means house is government. But I think mostly with respect to the motions that you're going to get, the motions are going to be Indian central government, because it's centric to India. So this house means that like central government per se, who is going to make policies in general for India in terms of foreign policy. Correct. Now you have when motions are set, they are in most instances weighed and can be debated equally well from both the sides. And I think this thing I've heard from most of the debaters, when you think that a particular thing does not align with your opinions, you think that this particular motion is like very biased. So a lot of times people think that when I keep like using the motion of like this house would ban smoking, people think that there's nothing on the off, because like why would you not want to ban smoking, right? So don't think that any kind of like motion is like not equally balanced, or the motion. So when we are making motions, we at least come up with like different like arguments which can be done on each side, and different responses that can be done on each side, right? So then is the time when you come up or you approve a particular motion, as opposed to just thinking, oh, this motion seems fine, and then we run it, because all motions are equally balanced and they are equal on both sides, and they're not like biased to a particular deal, right? Now, next to the weightage is not determined by the facts you retain in your speech, but the logic and reasoning with which you approach. I think that's something which we already dealt with in the last session. I think we told you that statistics and facts don't really matter a lot, as opposed to the logic that you put on behind that statistic. If you're saying that like 95% of Indian population uses internet, why is that statistic important? So you have to always link it back to the motion and tell as to why you're making the claim with respect to that particular statistic, as opposed to just saying a particular statistic. Now, what is the speaker role fulfillment? Government member and opposition member, I think it's all going to be same as what we told you earlier. I think PM and LO, I think we have already dealt with what they do and what the second speaker from proposition and opposition do, third speaker of proposition, third speaker of opposition do. So it's literally the same. But just to go over, I think governments, what do they do is that they first define the terms of the motion, explain your burden as to what you are going to like probably solve, or what you are taking upon yourself by the end of the debate, what are you going to solve. But then thirdly, explain the context of the debate. Where does the debate happen? Where, like why, or like what is the framing of the debate? Like why are we debating in the first place? Like what is the existing status quo? What is the problem that is happening around the world? So on and so forth, right? Then preemptively rebut. The first speaker is always supposed to preemptively rebut, because they can assume what the opposition is probably going to run, and then preemptively rebut that claim, so that you always get a higher like scoring as PM, because I don't think PM gets a chance to respond anyways. Then try to answer the following in the reply speeches. So this is important, what you're supposed to do in the reply speech. First, what is the purpose of the debate? Second, why am I proposing this over? And third, how is my proposition exclusively better than the side's government? I think it's more of an emotional value to the debate as opposed to a logical value. I think how I mostly do my reply speeches is that I go ahead and like take a particular stakeholder and then tell why this particular stakeholder is better in my side of the house as opposed to the other. For example, panel, I'm a migrant worker. and the thing that is going to happen in your side of the house is probably I won't get enough let's say job opportunities. I won't have enough amount of like money to feed my family. But what happens in my side of the house is that at least I have a job to sustain to. At least I have some amount of money to like feed my feed my like family and stuff like that. So I think you make it more of a like emotional value in order to convince the judge as to why you win. So you tell that panel the reason why we debated this particular debate was this, and this is the reason why we're proposing it, and this is the reason why you should vote for the proposition as opposed to the opposition. All right. So what opposition member then does is counter defines the motion in terms of like if you think that the motion is like if you think that the definition for proposition was uncharitable, therefore you counter define and tell why a particular term or definition makes more sense in your side of the house as opposed to the opponents. Then you say that what your arguments are, you deal with them in terms of the substantiation, the reasoning, etc. But also that doesn't mean that you can't preemptively rebut. You can still preempt as to what the second speaker or the third speaker is going to say in the side proposition, and then rebut that argument as well. But secondly, you obviously have heard what the proposition first speaker has said, and therefore you can rebut that claim as well. Now, try to answer the following questions in the reply speech from opponents. So what is the purpose of debate? The same thing, why are you proposing a particular thing? And like why a particular team is better than the other. Cool. Then you have what you do in rebuttals and responses. So I think rebuttals and responses are basically when you falsify the arguments of the other sides as to like why always what proposition is saying is not the true thing, or why it is not possible to have a particular thing on from proposition. Then what you do is that there are multiple ways of rebutting. First is that you can make concessions or mitigate the harms that proposition is saying. So mitigation is basically that you're not completely taking down that harm. You can probably say that why that harm is not like a big harm to, let's say, care about, or let's say why that harm is probably going to be tackled by the benefit that you're saying on opposition and stuff like that. But secondly, you can go ahead and like flip the argument. So the flip the argument is deals with more of like the reasoning value of proposition. So you question the reasoning and say that by the same reasoning of proposition, it's probably harmful in their side as opposed to our side. Third is you disprove the reasoning. So you say that what the reasoning proposition is giving is not as like beneficial as opposed to our reasoning, or you can say that the reasoning in and of itself is flawed. Third thing is that what is the trade-off? So trade-off is like when you trade off a particular benefit to a harm or something like that. I think you already like deal with that in concessions, but that trade-off is basically like if you are conceding to the idea that look, these particular amount of people are going to be harmed, but why is that a trade-off with the benefit that we give to you? That is what trade-off is. Now, what is the trade-off? Why is it relevant in engagement with your harms? I think the reason that why it is very beneficial is that oftentimes and not, you cannot completely take over a particular claim by simply saying that, no, I think minorities are also beneficial in our side of the house. You cannot always do that like in all the motions, right? So what you can do is like, let's say if minorities are not benefited in this particular aspect, we prove to you as to like why they're going to benefit in other aspect, and why that aspect is going to like overcome the harm of this particular aspect. So you do that so that the judge is like still convinced that minorities are not bad in your side either, but this probably like if they're harmed in one side, you're countering that by the benefits of other sides and why that benefit is able to take over or like supersede the harms that proposition is saying. I think sources I've already told you. I think you can go ahead in the Instagram and like other posts that Ogilvy posts in terms of latest knowledge posts and other themes. You can always go to the Quint, Mint, or any other newspapers and daily updates, or like you can go to the national news channels as well. Then you have a couple of documentaries that you can use, and then you can go ahead and like try to make sure that you know a little bit about Indian economy. You can know about like why like 5-year plan, or like in terms of like why like Niti Aayog exists, or like what is the role that Niti Aayog plans, what is the expenditure that Parliament does on a particular thing, like why like couple of statutes are there, or like why statues are there, or like why people, like what happens to the people's tax money, a lot of things that you're supposed to know. So you cannot just say that like, oh, opponents ran an argument on GDP and we are like in 4th to 6th grade and we don't know about GDP. I think that's like unfair because the fact that they know as opponents means that they have done better research than you. So you're supposed to at least know things which are relevant to the motion as opposed to not knowing anything. I think the criteria of evaluation remain similar: matter, manner, method. Matter, I think I've already told you the way how you present your argument, the reasoning, the substantiation, the facts that the studies that you've used, and why they're relevant. And then manner, the way you speak, your eye contact, your body language. That means you're always supposed to keep your cameras on. And then lastly, method, the way you structure your arguments. So speaker's argument structure, so the way how you're taking the POI, or whether you're spending a lot of time in your POIs, whether you're exceeding the time limit, all of it is going to be considered. And last is the schedule. And that's pretty much.
Ma'am, can the second last slide be showed again?
This?
I know. The one before the criteria for evaluation. Yes, this. Yes, ma'am. Thank you.
Cool. Are there any other questions? I will consider that as no. I think tomorrow we are going to mostly deal with the speaker role specifically to reply speeches. I think other speaker roles are similar. Other than that, I think we are going to deal with like what could be the policy and how you can implement them, and what could be the possible ways to come up with policies in different motions. And the last day, we're going to have case prep, which means we are going to see different motions, and then we can come up with like creative ideas to make cases on that. And then, yeah, that's pretty much it. Cool. With that, I think we can conclude the meeting. Thank you so much for joining, and
Thank you, ma'am.
Bye, ma'am.
Bye-bye.
Thank you, ma'am.